Today, as we continue the conversation on the future of Nigeria, I have with me an eminent Nigerian politician who is the minority leader in the Federal House of Representatives, representing PDP from the Obiakpo Federal Constituency. I'd like to welcome Honorable Kingsley Chinda. Honorable, you're welcome to Inside Sources.
My pleasure, Lalu.
Thank you for coming. Now, so here on Inside Sources, we try to focus on the future of Nigeria. That's the perspective that we use. And I'm aware that you're one of the people pushing the idea of something close to parliamentary system for Nigeria's future. So I wanted to ask you, why do you think that the presidential system that we have used so far should be replaced with something that is akin to parliamentary? What do you think that will give Nigeria a better future?
Well, thank you first for this opportunity. I would want to say that as a parliamentarian, in fact, as a public office holder, one of our major assignments is to solve problems that we have identified in the society. And you will agree with me, and I'm sure most Nigerians will agree that presently our country appears or is not where it ought to be. Our country is far from where it ought to be and where we expect it to be. So some of the things we have asked ourselves are, what is wrong with our country? Everybody will say politically, socially, religiously, and all that there are problems. But to identify the problems as parliamentarians and look at legislative solutions to some of these problems, we discovered, perhaps rightly or wrongly, but truly and very sincerely, we discovered that the system of government that we operate today appears not to be the best for us as a nation. And some of the reason is that we appear not to have considered our peculiar circumstance and background in importing systems of government to our country, in importing constitutions and, in fact, legislations to our country. And take the presidential system that we are currently operating. If you look at the United States government, you find out that their background is completely different with the Nigerian background. I will give you an example. Place a public office holder in the United States, allow him to exercise discretion on an issue, and then allow a Nigerian public office holder to also exercise same discretion on same issue. I'm sure that you will agree that the public office holder from the United States is more likely to exercise that discretion in the interest of the state, much more than the Nigerian public office holder. I'm not saying
in the interest of the public, really.
Public or the entire state, because to them, it's the American state, American dream. I'm not saying that Nigerian public office holder will not consider the public at all. But the United States public office holder is more likely. And what are the reasons? Look at their background, where they are coming from. Issues of tribe, issues of religion. In fact, even state. It's not as much in play as it is in Nigeria. Now, in the United States, you could have in a family, the father could come from one state, the son is from another state, the daughter is from another state. So if you're exercising discretion that has to do with states, multiple states, you know that you are likely to be dispassionate in exercising that discretion. In Nigeria, what you hear is that I am from the south, I am from the north, or I am from Niger Delta, and to our resources, Niger Delta resources must be secured. I'm from the north, so northern resources must be secured. We do not place strong emphasis on Nigeria as a nation. And that's why the question is still raging. Are we actually a nation? And so if you import laws from the United States to such a clime, there's a likelihood that the law will not serve the purpose for which you have imported that law. So what do? We must look at our background. We must craft laws, putting into consideration the background of our own people. And so if you craft laws that has to do with discretion for public office holders, the latitude you give to the American should not be exactly the same latitude you give to a Nigerian public office holder, you tighten the nozzle a little bit more for the Nigerian.
Because of
knowing
the
that,
circumstances.
exactly, knowing that there's likelihood or higher likelihood of abuse in Nigeria. But we import these laws, hook, line, and sinker, as if it will be a magic wand. Because it works in US, it must work in Nigeria. And so today, in Nigeria, you find out that individuals appear to be stronger than our institutions. Right from Mr. President to the ministers, to governors, commissioners, even to the local government council chairmen and councillors. And that's why people bow to us as public office holders. As if we can...
They are Lord and Master.
Of course, that we are the Lord of the manor. It's because of the system that we operate. So if we are crafting laws, we must put this into consideration and then begin to ensure that people are discouraged from this kind of practices. And so we have looked at all this and we said, look, for our country today, we must strengthen institutions. We must ensure that we reduce wastage in the public sector, which everybody is also complaining of. We must also ensure that public office holders are more accountable to the people. They must have that fear of God. I don't want to say fear of the people, but truly, public office holders should have fear of the people.
True.
In arriving at decisions. And then we must have people who will be hands-on in offices. The Senate should not be a place for it should not be a retirement home
for governors,
for politicians,
especially governors.
For politicians,
I know you won't say that, but that's fine.
The office of the president,
yes,
should not be a place for weaklings, for people who are tired. It should be an office for somebody who is ready, capable, and able to deliver on the assignment. And so if you have a quasi-parliamentary system where the president of the country is from the Senate and the head of government, the prime minister, is from the House of Reps, and they are there to give account over government policies to members of parliament.
On a regular basis.
On a regular
openly.
basis. Of course, what you have, even if it is once a month, you must give report and accounts to parliament. You find out that you cannot have a president that is unfit to govern the country. It's not possible.
I agree with you. And please go ahead. Finish
now,
your point.
If you also look at some of the things that we meet in course of serving the Nigerian public, yes, sometimes we are heavily criticized. But for those of us who sit back and look at these things, to be sincere, some of these things are morally wrong. But if you look at our laws, they are right. And so what do we do as parliamentarians? Those things that we know that are morally wrong, but are legally correct, we should begin to jig the laws to also get them in line
to move
with
towards
the feelings,
to
move
the morals.
towards what the society actually wants, to get the law closer to morals. That's the only way we can have a sane society.
Okay, interesting. So just so we can have a conversation, I actually like your opening remarks, and that was why I, actually stepped back so that you can express it very clearly. But I want us to dimension it now a little bit deeply. I am also of the view, by the way, that the presidential system, and I've said this over and again, I'd like to say it and get your own take. The presidential system gives an opportunity for whoever is the president, and like you also said, even the governor, not to be engaged. He or she, under our laws, under the presidential system, is capable. He has the powers to determine the level of his engagement. So, for instance, if he doesn't want to talk to the press, if he doesn't want to engage with people, if he doesn't want to take the tough, difficult questions in a public forum, he's completely able to avoid that. And we have seen precedents. We used to have President Obasanjo do maybe once in a month a media interaction, and then it has gone to the point where the last president did a press interview, maybe for the entire 8 years, maybe 2 or 3 times. And now it's almost 2 years. We don't have, nobody has sat down to interrogate the president. So because of that and the experience that I have had from the inside, I am clear in my mind that the presidential system is not going to help us to advance, some of the things that you've said and to actually deliver democratic dividend to the people. The question that I wanted to ask you now is that, can you tell us some of the specifics in the bill that some of you are pushing forward? Can you give us some of the specifics that addresses and that creates the hope that what we are talking about, what you guys are pushing, will actually increase transparency and accountability?
Well, thank you again, and I appreciate you for giving that support to this push and move towards a homegrown parliamentary system of government.
It's an imperative.
The bill we have proposed, it's for a phased system, commencing from the local government level. And then it's a system where you have just one election. So saving cost starts with the first step you take. That is the election itself. So
you mean that the elections will be held in one day?
One day, and election, for parliamentary election, simplicity. So when you conduct the election for parliament, councillors, state assembly, and national assembly, that is it. So amongst the councillors, they will pick a chairman and deputy chairman. Amongst the state assembly members, they will pick a governor and deputy governor. And then amongst members of National Assembly, you pick the Prime Minister and the President.
Excellent. So no more presidential elections,
no more executive elections. And so you have saved a lot of fund. Now, the implication again is that if you are bringing anybody out as a councillor, you know that the person must have the capacity to be chairman of that local government council. So it will improve the quality of persons that come up. You are sending anybody to the National Assembly, you know that there is the chance or chances that that person could be the Prime Minister or the President of the country. So you will send your first 11 to public offices. You will no longer want to manage, because if you send somebody who is not qualified, it means that you also directly edging yourself out of any opportunity that comes. So you find that the quality of persons that will come up will improve tremendously. And the same system, if the president is from the House of Reps, monthly, he has to give account of government business to the parliament. And so government policies will be discussed, parliamentarians will be fully aware, and by implication, Nigerians will be aware. I also give an example of some of the things we have witnessed. You recall when we were talking about even a contract entered with China in Chinese language, whether it is true or not. But those things cannot come up under this system. Because it will be openly discussed. Yeah, it will be openly discussed. People will be aware of the terms of such agreement before it is entered into. And so government policies, even recently, we were talking about the CBN and issues of recruitment, and then the issues of closure of offices in Lagos and all that. These are government policies that Nigerians never understood. Even the parliament never understood what was happening. And so everybody was kicking. And the time will dissipate in attacking things that government has failed to carry Nigerians along will completely be removed. And aside that, what we have proposed is that because we know that we cannot be perfect, we propose that we start with the local government councils. Try it out, look at the mistakes and the errors, and then continue to make consequential amendments of the laws
all the way up
as we begin to see the loopholes. And then after the local government councils, we go dovetail to the state level, where you have the state assembly elections, and then the governor and deputy governor comes from the House of Assembly. And where there are mistakes, errors, and all that, we also keep correcting ourselves before finally we get to the national level. Before we get to the national level, all the consequential amendment of our constitution and other laws would have been made and perfected. And because we're also aware that some persons might think that we are targeting perhaps the present government, and then we don't want them to conclude their tenure and all that, or that it has to do with a particular tribe or region trying to
to hijack
the system or
the queue,
or witch hunt any other group. We have also agreed that it will be good for this system to set in place and take off after the 8 years
of the current
that is allowed for the current set of public office holders, so that nobody is being witch hunt. Nobody is being targeted. And aside that, we also believe that if it comes to running of government,
right,
like in the parliament, right, if you have the ministers amongst parliamentarians, it is either you are up and doing or you leave office because you are accountable to your colleagues. And running of the office of the minister and his constituency office in parliament is on the same budget. Today we are complaining that members of National Assembly bought SUV for themselves.
160 million worth of
fine.
Each.
If ministers, I'm sure that ministers all would have also bought, if not all, most would have also bought SUVs for themselves. So if you are a minister and a parliamentarian, what it means is that you buy one. That will serve the two offices. So it will still save cost. So these are some of the things that we have put in place, and we expect that as we commence, we are not saying that we have a perfect document.
Right.
We'll keep making consequential amendments to it. But whether there is need to rejig the present system that we run, the answer is yes.
I wanted to ask you, so the National Assembly is Nigeria's parliament. And even based on what we have discussed so far today, the parliament is meant to be where the people's will is expressed, Now, a few things have happened, since 1999 up to now, that I think, is still affecting the reputation of the National Assembly. For instance, this past week, one of your members, had an altercation with a alien driver, actually slapped him and all of that. How do you think this kind of behavior, or put differently, what's your own take, and what is the House doing to prevent this kind of interaction between people who are meant to be the custodians of the people's expression of their will? You will expect a representative to be the one actually sorting out issues with the people, not the one afflicting them like the representative did. So I just use that as an example that the National Assembly has not had a very good reputation. You talked about the issue of the 160 million SUVs. And of course, yes, ministers also have the same thing. But I guess it's because of the numbers, over 400 of you in the National Assembly. And people are saying that it's a very difficult time, 160 million per person. They could have used that money for all kind of stuff. So all of this is accruing to people not really trusting the National Assembly. What are you guys doing about that? Or aren't you concerned?
Well, let me start from the specific. Right. The issue that has to do with our colleague and the Uber operator. Everybody condemned it. We also condemned it. I called him personally and we spoke. And clearly he also showed remorse. He's human. Sometimes you wake on the wrong side. I think that he didn't do well, and he has actually apologized to Nigerians. Presently, he's being prosecuted for that. He's in court.
Yeah.
He's at the magistrate court. The House has also sent him to the disciplinary committee of the House on the same issue.
Okay.
And so we also expect that perhaps he might suffer double jeopardy if he's undergoing prosecution and he is disciplined in the House. But in essence, I don't think that anybody would agree that that is a standard for parliamentarians. They call us honorable members.
Yeah.
And so we should be honorable in character within and outside the parliament.
Absolutely.
And people should look up to us. I keep saying that public office holders are like pastors or imam. They should be role model in society.
Absolutely.
And so people should look up to you both in your character, the language you use, and all that should portray that kind of dignity and respect to the people. After all, without the people, you will not be there.
Right.
The first lesson I give to those who work with me in Parliament is to educate them that the office I occupy is not mine. It belongs to the people of Obiabo. And so if you are not ready to respect them, you don't need to be part of this system. Good. Any day I am tired of doing that, I go to my private office. I'm a lawyer by profession.
You have a second address.
Exactly. And so I owe nobody anything in my private office. But in public office, I must know that I am not a boss to myself. So I join our colleague in very sincerely and deeply apologizing to the young man involved and to Nigerians. It is not in our character. It is not how it should be. And our colleague too has also shown remorse. Now, on the other issue of this arm of government, this is an unsung arm of government, the Parliament. And let me also say that some of the things we suffer could also, because we are supposed to be watchdog on the executive arm.
Yeah.
And the executive controls the fund.
Yeah.
And so to also clip our arm or our wings, the executive must also try to blackmail us and paint us in bad light before Nigerians. So some of these things, I say that it could be coming from the other arm of government to blackmail us and make Nigerians lose confidence in us, so that even when we talk, they don't mind them. They have an ulterior motive. Because you also find out that when the Parliament goes for oversight, sometimes they don't even believe in your sincerity. I have had several experiences, even in public spaces, where members of House of Representatives, I feel ashamed when you hear such things, because you know how much you have put in, and you know your own intentions. But I will also want to beg that sometimes we also need to be encouraged.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to be encouraged, because
the perception is just very bad.
Exactly, when you go out there and you are faced with this kind of perception, it doesn't also encourage you much.
But you understand the perception, though. You understand why.
Clearly. But in every part, every system, every arm of government, you have these issues. And that's why we are agitating for a change. Because the discretion, the latitude that is given to public office holder is too much.
Too wide.
And so we must begin to curb it. In the Parliament, we have a committee that is like a disciplinary committee, the Ethics Committee of Parliament. Why did we set up that committee? Because we know that some persons might misbehave.
Right.
So it's not a perfect environment. But then there are still people who are studiously, who are sincerely working in the interest of this country. So we shouldn't just sweep everybody under the carpet.
True.
Nigeria itself, as a country, we still say that we have hope. And truly we have hope. But then, are we doing what we ought to do? No. Public office holders do not enjoy the confidence of the people. But then it is not every public office holder too that is in that class. So what I'm saying is that, yes, while we criticize and hit hard, if we see commendation, we should also commend to encourage others. So it should be the carrot and the stick approach.
Okay. All right. Because of our time, let's begin to wrap up. I wanted to also ask you about the place of the opposition. You are the minority leader in the Federal House of Representatives. Do you think that the way politics and governance is being practiced today in Nigeria with the circumstances, do you think that we have an opposition? And I'll give just one or two examples so that you can respond. So we have a situation where the National Assembly has oversight. As a matter of fact, the National Assembly has powers of appropriation. As we are speaking now, we don't even know which budget we are operating. It's about 2 or 3. Each time the executive comes, they give a new budget, and there's a bit of confusion. The National Assembly has a responsibility there. And then in the appointment of people to public offices, there has been instances where, for instance, the presidency will send names of people who are obviously, openly political. Even people that are, if not card-carrying members of parties, people that are sufficiently perceived in that light, nominating them to be members of INEC, either in the state or the national commission. All of these things suggest to us that there is no opposition in the parliament, in the National Assembly, because we don't see any kind of pushback. What's your take, Honorable?
Well, clearly, I would not say that there is no opposition in the National Assembly. You know that the minorities will have their say, but majority will have their way. I take the issue of operating 4 budgets, which is a life example you have just brought. When it came up, we vehemently opposed it on the floor of the parliament. We said no, we criticized it, we opposed it, but it was put to vote. And it passed. So, having decided by majority vote, it is a decision of the National Assembly. And so the Nigerian out there, National Assembly has approved it. So nothing happened.
But you guys you didn't raise L.
We did.
Okay.
We did. That day, the floor was rowdy. It was a little bit rancorous on the floor of the parliament on that day. In fact, at a point, the House was to adjourn on it. And so, normally when it happens like that, members are called from their offices to come vote and all that and all that. So, yes, I will also say that when we started the 10th Assembly.
Sorry, what about the nomination of people into INEC? What about that?
Sure, the nomination of persons to INEC, if they are card-carrying members, it should not fly. I completely agree with you.
And we don't see any opposition. There was no opposition at all.
Well, if you also look at it from the other angle, I think that litigation is one thing that we should also explore. Because like I have told you, you can have your say, but the majority will have their way. But then we have non-governmental organizations operating if individuals will be shy from going to court. And so the non-governmental organization should be sensitized enough to take up such matters and have a decision on them.
The problem is that oftentimes, those cases don't go anywhere. And the Constitution empowers the National Assembly, as a matter of fact, for the most part, the Senate, to be able to do the pushback. That would have been effective. But yeah, we have a lot of cases. Serap goes to court every Sunday, but hey, I don't know whether they've even won one case out of this stuff. It's good that they are there to hold people to account. But I'm saying that National Assembly is the one that has the power, the authority to actually say to the executive, no, you can't do that.
If you look at the makeup of opposition today in the National Assembly, it's like it's never been before. We have 7 opposition political parties.
Oh, 7?
7. As against
PDP, LP, ABGA,
NNPP, SDP, YPP,
wow.
Right? 7. As it's never been before. So it's more complex than it used to be. However, if you also look at the position of opposition in most of those issues, we take clear stand on them. But now amongst the opposition, if you have 7 political parties, and the ruling party is able to get 3 or 4 political parties out of the 7.
Yeah,
so it has reduced your number. So when you go to vote, you're not likely to succeed. But that does not mean that you should relax. So you always make your point. I give an example again. The trial we saw yesterday of infants.
Yes, the manners. I was going to.
The opposition has taken a position on it quickly, even if the House is not going to sit at plenary for next week. But we have sent out our position on that. We condemned it squarely.
Did that come from are you referring to the one of former VP Atiku? Or the party?
The party in Parliament, the caucus in Parliament.
Okay.
The caucus in Parliament has also taken a position condemning it squarely and then asking the Attorney General to immediately take steps. And we have also forwarded a correspondence to him.
Okay. It's, it's...
So sometimes when we forward such correspondence, if the press picks it up, so be it. But we will never sleep.
It's important. It's important, as we conclude, Honorable Chinda, it's important in a democracy, in a party democracy, to have a strong opposition.
True.
I am perceived to be a progressive, and I served an administration of APC, for 8 years. But I would rather have a strong opposition, because if you don't have a strong opposition in a democracy, it is good as a dictatorial government. So the place and the role of opposition is very, very critical, and we should do everything to protect it. It is in our best interest.
I agree.
That's what.
I agree with you. And for those two who think that we're dovetailing into a one-party state, I would say that that is a dream. And not just a dream, but it will end up a nightmare.
I don't think a one-party state will work in Nigeria. We shouldn't allow it.
Even where you push yourselves into a one-party state, there will be an implosion within that party, because you cannot kill opposition, no matter how hard you try.
It's very important.
The voice of the opposition is there to balance the system and also provide checks. And then for any sincere public office holder, you should also encourage opposition, because it will help you to sit up and deliver on the oath of your office. When you have people that are actually working and criticizing what you're doing, you're likely to perform better. And to Nigerians, clearly, I will again say that the system of government that we operate, the presidential system of government, is not good enough for us. The time has come for us to rejig that system of government and come up with a homegrown system that will serve our country better, and then will place us where we hope to be. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Kingsley Chinda, a legal practitioner and a prominent politician, the minority leader of the Federal House of Representatives. Thank you for coming to Inside Sources, and thank you for your contributions, to national development. And hopefully, we will push it until we get a great Nigeria that we believe is actually the destiny of this country.
Amen.